Welcome back to the channel, Yu-Gi-Oh fans. I have already done this video, so if you want to check the original, it's over here somewhere. In that one, I had a lot of comments saying, enjoyed the video, but it would be better if I had someone explaining the cards to me, explaining if I was right or wrong after my choices. Basically, I'm going to look at Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm from a Pokemon background. I used to play a little Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm going to try and predict if they are good cards, bad cards, in the middle, all of the in-between. So in this video, I am joined by none other than Blaze Templar, one of those people from the other video, runs his own channel. So go check him out. I'll leave his link in the description. But I'll pass it over to him to take over, introduce himself, and the idea for this video.
Hey Woody fans, my name is Blaze Templar, as I just gave away. I was reached out to by Woody to get a collection of cards for him to kind of sink his teeth into and kind of guess at. We're going to start with Card D. It's an Earth attribute, level 2 monster with 800 attack, 400 defense, machine.
Okay, that's a really interesting card to start with. I've actually never heard of the card. Just looking what it does, cannot be special summoned during your main phase 1. If this card was normal summoned this turn. Oh, okay, so if it was normal summoned in your main phase 1, you can tribute this card and then draw 2 cards. Then it becomes the end phase, so you cannot special summon during this turn when it activates. So that does skip the battle phase as well as your second main phase. So so the effect is really good, because I know in Yu-Gi-Oh there's not a ton of draw cards. I know there's stuff to search things out. But Pot of Greed, which drew 2, was like mind-blowing to people. Imagine them seeing Professor Sycamore. I am going to say it's hard because drawing cards is really good, but it's not a great monster. It basically skips your turn. I guess if you're really on the back foot, it could help. I want to say it's really bad because you literally miss a turn, but I think it might be worth it to get more cards. Like I say, cards are a premium in this game, so I'm going to say it's middle ground. I can't see this being like a top tier card. I can't see it being a bad card, so I'm going to go for the middle.
So honestly, that's a really good assessment for Card D. For a long time, a lot of players thought it was incredibly good, others thought it was terrible, and so they kind of argued over it. And it did see competitive success. It did see some play in some meta decks. It was rare, but it happened. It's one of those cards that nowadays is seen as really bad, but when it first came out, did see some meta success and was okay. Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, came out during 2015, the Duelist Alliance era. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material. Oh, I didn't bring that up. Okay, so this is a Warrior Xyz monster with 1000 attack and 2500 defense. Now, Xyz monsters are a little bit like Fusion, where you have to have certain monsters combined to make them. So it's like that, except here, it's 2 monsters that are level 3 each. They need to be on the field first. And then what you do is you take both cards and kind of stack them on top of each other. So you have card 1 and card 2, they go like this, then you put your Xyz card on top of it. Now, when it says you detach material, you know those 2 monsters that are underneath, you can actually take one of them, send it to the graveyard, and that's what's called detaching.
Now this one's difficult. I think the once per turn thing you can activate once you've decided to attack, so you could potentially attack and then buff it as much as you need to afterwards. Basically 1 to 3, send them to your graveyard, you get 500 per card, which is pretty good. He can go to 2500. You do need 2 level 3 monsters to get him into play, as I understand it, which seems quite a lot. It's quite powerful. It's like a Dark Magician in my terms. I don't know on this one. I do know in Yu-Gi-Oh! The graveyard's quite important. I know there's decks built around it, so maybe this guy was in one of those decks. The problem here is you're sending 3 blind cards to the graveyard, which could be really good stuff. I'm gonna say he's not somewhere in between not great and medium.
So this was a bait card. I'm gonna 100% admit that this was a bait card. Dante of the Burning Abyss was a card that for several formats in a row was kind of known as a banlist survivor, where he was right on the edge of getting fully banned, but managed to squeeze on by multiple times because that effect is just so good. Now, it still can see some play in certain decks. It's pretty amazing how good it is to be able to do something like that with Dante. Goodbye, Dante, and hello to Cyber Dragon. Now, this card is iconic. This is an anime card. This one was was used by one of the main protagonists in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, a guy named Zane Truesdale, and his entire strategy was the Cyber style, where he used Cyber Dragon and its various fusion materials and monsters to try to beat down the enemy really hard. So basically think the Seto Kaiba if Seto Kaiba used machines instead of dragons. Kind of like that.
So Cyber Dragon, it says if your opponent's got a monster and you don't, you can special summon this, which gets it into play very easily. 2100 attack is good for that. I think that's on the higher end of monsters you can get into play. Obviously you need none on your side. I don't think it's worth tributing to get this out. I do know Cyber Dragon, I have heard that name. So for that reason, I feel like it's pretty good. Although, again, it's only if you're on the back foot, if you've got nothing on the field or it's the start of the game. Kind of situational. I'm going to go between average and very good. Somewhere in there. Middle to top tier, I think. I don't know if it's just because I've heard of the card. I'm thinking that, though. It's definitely, like Blaze mentioned, a big card in the anime. But I didn't watch that part of the anime, so I'm not sure where I've heard it. Maybe I've seen some episodes. I'm going to go for sort of middle to top ground there. I don't think it's a top tier card, but I think it may be in some decks. I don't know what decks, machine decks. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that one.
Okay, so here's the thing about Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon came out at the end of the Chaos format. Right when Yu-Gi-Oh! GX was starting to get rolling, Cyber Dragon dropped, and this card was meta-defining. This thing was a complete beast. It changed the entire speed of the game. Yeah, it was that big. So Cyber Dragon, as you figured out, was usually a turn 2 play where it's like, okay, it's now my turn. I'm going to special summon Cyber Dragon. But this is a time when board wipes still exist quite a bit, like Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, Ring of Destruction. There were just a lot of ways to clear monsters back then. What's more, because it's a special summon, you still can normal summon, which means it paired really well with the recently released Monarch cards, which are cards that trigger effects when they are tribute summoned. And so this card just keeps seeing play again and again, and even now, despite the fact Cyber Dragon hasn't received any sort of support in several years, will still pop up. Alright, so let's keep going. Goodbye, Gores. Next is our friend Judgment Dragon. Now, this card is kind of one of the cards I personally liked quite a bit back in the day. I just really like its artwork, and there are some pretty funny memes with this card.
Now we've got Judgment Dragon. I really hope this is a top tier card. Just looking at the art, it's absolutely gorgeous. I would play this card, but let's see what it actually does. It's got 3000 attack. It's got 3, 6, 8. So I think that's 3 tributes to bring it into play. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by having 4 or more Lightsworn monsters with different names in your graveyard. And cannot be special summoned by other ways. Okay, so ignore what I just said. Although it says special summon, so I think you can still tribute summon it. You can pay 1000 life points, destroy all other cards on the field during each of your end phases. Send the top 4 cards of your deck to the graveyard. You must control this face-up card to activate and resolve this effect. Okay, so you pay 1000 life points, destroy all other cards on the field, so it is literally just this card left, even yours. It doesn't specify your opponent's. During each of the end phases, send the top 4 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So if you're playing a graveyard heavy deck, this is ideal. I think this card is insane. Paying 1000 life points to board wipe everything but this that seems really overpowered. And it sends stuff to the graveyard. I'm going to say this is a top tier card. I think decks have maybe been built around this. If not built around this, it was a massive part in some decks. That's just a really powerful ability. For 1000 life points, which you're going to pay because you can hit for 3000 with this. So it's a pretty good trade. And you literally destroy everything. Get rid of those trap cards, spell cards, everything. I don't know if this one's bait, but yeah, I think it's a top tier card.
The thing about Judgment Dragon is it was built as a support card for the Lightsworn archetype. Weirdly enough, it's not considered a Lightsworn card itself, but it works in Lightsworn decks. And if you notice, there are a lot of non-once per turns on this card, which makes it so much better. Like, you can use the Judgment Dragon
pay 1,000 to destroy everything on the field multiple times. Judgment Dragon was such a powerful player, and so one of the things that a lot of players that played Judgment Dragon would do would be they would drop a Judgment Dragon, clear the field, drop 2 more Judgment Dragons, and just win the game. It was incredible. So, an amazing card. You're absolutely right.
Anyway, let's keep moving. I said let's keep moving. Thank you, computer. Okay, so we're going to go back to some classic anime with number 39, Utopia. This is another one of those Xyz monsters we talked about earlier.
So it's 2 level 4 monsters to get it into play. When any player's monster declares an attack, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card, negate the attack. When this card is targeted for an attack, while it has no XYZ materials, destroy this card. So once you've used your materials, got rid of them, eventually it destroys itself. But it does mean you can negate attack. So even if you just use it once, that's a huge plus. 2,500 attack seems good. But I do also have to target this with the attack. I don't know if there's a way to make him untargetable. I assume not, because that would be broken. I do think this is a top tier card. I think the fact that you can negate attacks is very powerful. It's quite a powerful card in itself. XYZ, I feel like I've seen a lot of stuff around that. I think that's more of a style of card than a deck, but I don't know. For me, this sticks out. I don't know if I've seen this before. But yeah, it just seems very powerful. Good stats, good abilities. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way for your opponent to get rid of your material. So if there is, maybe not as good. But I'm going to say top tier because I don't know of any cards that do that.
Utopia is the protagonist card from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. It's kind of a bait card, I'm afraid. So basic Utopia is pretty awful. Being able to stop attacks sounds really good on paper, but most of the time Yu-Gi-Oh! Players want to clear the opponent's board before they go in for the attack to begin with. Beating over monsters, that hasn't really been a big focal point for Yu-Gi-Oh! For a very long time. Really, the only reason to use Utopia is a springboard into its actual good cards.
Now, this is probably my personal favorite card, so I had to include it in the list. Stardust Dragon. So, the reason I like this card so much is because it's the protagonist of 5D's main boss monster. And it has kind of a cool effect.
Okay, Stardust Dragon. Now, this is another one that I don't know where I've seen this, but I've seen this card a few times. So, I'm going to guess for that reason it's quite good. 1 tuner... 1 tuner, 1 plus non-tuner. So 1 needs to be a tuner, 1 not. When a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field, you contribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. During the end phase, if this effect was activated this turn and was not negated, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. So basically, you can just keep reusing this thing. I don't know if I'm missing something, but that seems insanely overpowered. I'm going to say that is a top tier. I'm going to say decks are built around this. It's one of the best cards, maybe. I feel like I've seen it quite a lot. Maybe it's just, again, from the anime. I am going to say this is a top tier card. This is a meta card. This is one that decks are built around. It's one... I know there is a ban list in Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe this is on it. It's powerful, basically.
It never did get on the ban list, Stardust Dragon. However, Stardust Dragon is started, historically speaking, as an incredible card. You're absolutely right there. So what makes this card so good is the fact it doesn't actually have to fit in any one specific deck. This thing can float into any deck that uses tuner monsters. Base Stardust Dragon is incredibly good. It has kind of worn down over the years because a lot of different ways to remove cards from the game instead of just destroying them have started to pop up. There are ways to work around Stardust Dragon now, so it doesn't quite keep up with the meta anymore. But it is still a very good card, and it has seen competitive success for quite a bit. I think it even saw some play in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Frames era of play. So a card that can keep going 10 years later, pretty impressive.
Masked Hero Darklaw. So I had to get Jaden Yuki a little bit of love. He's the GX protagonist. So this card doesn't work like your traditional fusion. So you just need to follow the rules to make mask change, which is basically any dark attributes elemental hero monster can make Darklaw using mask change.
Okay, Masked Hero Darklaw. I like the name, I like the art, I like the look of the card. It's a fusion monster. So it's punishing draw, it's punishing graveyard, which are both massively important things in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think. I am trying to pick the game up more. I've been playing a little more. I even downloaded Master Duel, is it? So I am going to try and get more into this. So if you do want to see Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff, make sure you subscribe. Go subscribe to Blaze Templar as well. Again, thank you massively to him for helping me out with this. I'm going to say this is a top tier card. Stopping both of those things is really powerful. It's not overly difficult to get into play depending what mask changes, but I assume it's some kind of ritual to bring it into play. I'm going to say this is a top tier card. It stops two very, very important things. If your opponent's strategy is to get stuff in the graveyard, they can't do that. It's banished instead. You need to deal with this guy. Top tier card, I think, yeah, easily.
So here's the thing. In any other deck, Mask Hero Darklaw would be on the ban list. It's that good of a card. The problem is that Mask Hero Darklaw doesn't have the protection to really allow it to shine and be an oppressive force. Otherwise, this card would totally be on the ban list forever because that effect is just so oppressively good. It's so good, in fact, it actually saw competitive success in decks that didn't run any other elemental heroes. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a lot of decks that'll run something that kind of awkward because it doesn't fit into their engine, but that's how good Darklaw really is.
Next is Kalut the Moon Shadow. This is a Blackwing monster, which is based off the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's era of Yu-Gi-Oh!
During either player's damage step, when a Blackwing monster you control is attacking or being attacked, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. That monster gains 1400 attack until the end of this turn. Okay, so this thing isn't going to be played. It looks like it's going to be thrown away just to make your Blackwings more powerful. The fact that you can do it when they're being attacked means they declare the attack and then you can do this after they've done that. You can catch them off guard. It's sort of a got you card. I think this is very powerful. I feel like I say, I was looking at a deck to buy. I've got my old Blue Eyes deck. I'm probably just going to upgrade that. Or somebody did mention in the other video something about a dinosaur deck, which I've been looking at to buy as well. Very excited to try that out and get into it a little more. I'm not going to get into the heavily competitive stuff because some of it loses me completely, like pendulums and some of the cards with like pluses on the side and walls of text. But some of this stuff looks a lot of fun. But I do think Blackwing is a deck that I saw, although this guy was just making sort of casual decks, I think. But I'm going to say this is top tier. I think Blackwing might be a powerful deck, and I think this card is very powerful in it. That's such a strong ability, I feel like. And you can get it in your graveyard. There's probably something to bring it back into play, I would think. Even if there isn't, that's such a powerful ability. So I'm going to say top tier for that one.
So Kalut the Moon Shadow is an interesting card. It was part of the Blackwing archetype, as you mentioned. And Blackwings, when they first were released, saw a ton of success. Yeah, it definitely was an important piece to the Blackwing engine, but they arguably could get away without running it, weirdly enough. It was a good analysis, and when the game was earlier, back when Blackwing started, oh yeah, still an amazing card.
So we've got the legendary Pot of Greed. No one knows what it does. Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans, you know the joke. So, Pot of Greed. It simply says, draw 2 cards.
Pot of Greed. I've been watching a ton of Team APS, and the do you know what this card does thing is, yeah, always gets a laugh out of me. This is obviously one of the most iconic cards from the game. It was out when I used to play, I feel like. I have seen that this has been banned. That's one of the things that it just sort of I've seen around. At least I think it is. I'm going to look stupid now if it isn't or wasn't. But basically draw 2 cards. Like I say, in Pokemon, there's stuff like Hop, which draws 3, which is just a terrible card. Nobody ever plays Hop. But in this, I think this is one of the best cards in the game. It's just, I find it fascinating the differences between TCGs. Obviously, like the bigger ones like Pokemon, Magic, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Just how different they are, but they all seem so unique and interesting and fun to play. Yeah, I don't know. This is why I like doing this type of video. It's just cool looking at cards and trying to decipher if they're any good. I know for a fact this one's good.
So you're absolutely right. Pot of Greed is an insanely powerful card, and it can never come off the ban list. It's a free +1, and in a game where even going card neutral is pretty good, going +1 is nuts. And most of the cards that get printed that have +1s nowadays have heavy restrictions on them. And Pot of Greed is a big reason why.
Alright, so I have one more spell from the Duel Monsters era, and that is Painful Choice.
Select 5 cards from your deck and reveal them to your opponent. Your opponent declares one card among them, add that card to your hand and discard the others. Again, if you're trying to put stuff in your graveyard, fantastic card. I think you're allowed 4 copies, the same as Pokemon. So I'm going to say you could potentially choose like 2 copies of 2 things and still have them in your deck if they get thrown away. So I feel like this is quite a good card. I don't think it's top tier because realistically they're not going to give you the card you want unless they don't know what you want. I feel like it's going to be fairly easy to work out which are the better cards. I don't know, if you pick 5 good cards though, then they're kind of stuck. I'm going to say somewhere between average and top tier. I don't think it's good enough to be top tier. I hate speaking with confidence on stuff that I know nothing about, like Yu-Gi-Oh! But I guess that's what this video is. So I am going to say average to top tier. Definitely not top tier, definitely not average. Somewhere in the middle.
Painful Choice. When it first came out, it did start seeing some experimentation, and it was considered a decent card back then. Not like as good as Pot of Greed or even Graceful Charity, but it was a decent card. However, it has only gotten better since then. So if Pot of Greed can never come off the ban list, Painful Choice is that by like an exponential power of like 200. It's insane just how powerful Painful Choice is. This is arguably the most powerful card ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, it's that good. To give you real context, there's a limited card called Foolish Burial that allows you to send 1 card from your deck to the graveyard, and that's all it does. And it is limited compared to being able to send 4 cards to the graveyard and go hand neutral. So yeah, Painful Choice can never come off the ban list.
So we do have another card, again from the original era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mirror Force.
Mirror Force, another classic card. This was definitely around when I used to play. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters. Very powerful effect, basically board clear just for your opponent. They need to sort of play around this. I feel like this changes the game slightly. You know this is around. You know you need to play around it. You can't just throw everything forward, be hyper aggressive. Cards like this are very important for the game. I think it's one of the best, I'm going to say easily top tier. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that. I do see it played a lot. And when I say played a lot, I mean when I'm watching like Team APS. There was another guy I've been watching recently that does like anime duels on Master Duel. I'm trying to think of his name, but yeah, absolutely love that as well. I've seen this card played a few times. So yeah, I think it's going to be good. It used to be good. I know it was a heavily played card before, but we had no idea what we were doing, so it might just be... That might just be us. I'm going to say it's a top tier card though.
So Mirror Force is an interesting card because it was once on the ban list. It was very powerful, and had it never been banned, it probably would have seen a lot more play for a lot longer. Back in the day, yeah, Mirror Force was incredible, and it stayed as a very solid card for quite a while, but nowadays, it unfortunately doesn't see a lot of play. You have no way to search it, it's slow, it only activates during the battle step, when usually players try to clear the opponent's board before they go into battle. It's really sad to see a staple like that do that, but that sometimes happens in a game like this.
Here's the first of the 2 bonus cards, and they are tag teamed together. Raigeki. Now this card simply says, destroy all monsters your opponent controls.
Another absolute classic. I remember pulling this card. Raigeki, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. So you don't need to catch him in a trap. You can literally just hit him with this. Destroy everything. There's no playing around this. Massively overpowered. I wouldn't be surprised if this was banned now, honestly. It's a difficult one. I think if it's not banned, it's maybe restricted or something. It's definitely top tier. Very easy one. So let's move on to the next one, which
Raigeki, when it first printed, you're absolutely right. This card was absurd. It was just, drop this, you'd clear the opponent's board. It was basically for free. It was incredible. Does see some play in the side deck especially, so it's not gone by any stretch of the imagination. It still sees some healthy play here and there, but it definitely is starting to show its age a little bit. Still an amazing card.
So the other card we have is actually kind of cool. Anti-Raigeki. When your opponent activates the spell card Raigeki, negate its effect, and if you do, destroy all monsters your opponent controls.
There's no way. Is this a real card? Anti-Raigeki. That's incredible. Is this real? I don't know if I'm being like caught out here. The fact that they've printed this and been like, this is far too powerful, so they've made a direct counter specifically only to that card. I kind of love it because you can play this, and then if they're playing Raigeki, they're like sort of umming and ahhing when they can play it. I don't think it's good enough though. I don't think that's going to stop people playing Raigeki unless everyone was playing it. If everyone was playing it, then it's the perfect counter, and suddenly people will stop playing it. Obviously, you need the card in your hand though, so yeah, it's a tough one. I'm gonna say mid to top tier. It might even be bad. It's so specific. I don't know. I think it's funny. It reminds me of something like Drapion V in Pokemon, which basically Mew was dominating the format. So they released Drapion. It hits Mew for weakness, so it knocks it out in a hit. It's got a ability which says the amount of Rapid Strike and Fusion Strike and other Pokemon in play minuses its energy cost, so it attacks for free. It's so obviously made just to take out Mew. Not as obvious as Anti-Raigeki, of course, because it isn't just named Anti-Mew. Anti-Mew. Yeah, that's fascinating. That is really... They're almost admitting Raigeki was too strong. So Raigeki top tier, this sort of mid, I would guess.
Okay, so Anti-Raigeki. You're not entirely wrong. When this card was printed, Raigeki was one of the most oppressive cards in the game, as the card would suggest. However, the problem is that it's too specific, and Raigeki was on the limited list at this point, which means it only had one card it could use. Back then, they didn't have a ban list, they only had limited. It was really terrible, especially when there are other cards that are a lot more universal, because it doesn't say anti-Raigeki, anti-Dark-Hole, it's just anti-Raigeki. That's kind of how that goes, unfortunately, but I had to include it. It was such a funny card that I just really wanted to show that one off.
But that is the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Hopefully Blaze has added something to you. I really enjoyed doing this with him. So again, massive thank you to you. I'll drop his link below. Go check out his channel. If you do want to see any more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, it's probably going to be paired with him. So let me know in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this one, if it was better than the last. I think it was a lot better. So thank you for the suggestions. As I said in the other video, drop your suggestions for other cards we can do in the future below. We make sure they appear in the next one. That is all we've got time for in this one though. So thank you if you've made it to this point, and I will catch you in the next one.